Thank you so much for listening to Urbanistica podcast. I am Mustafa Sharif, an urban planner, and you're more than welcome to join my big journey of exploring the making of smarter and more livable cities. Please don't forget to follow Urbanistica on the different social media platforms, and also let's connect on LinkedIn. Big thanks to Urbanistica podcast partner, AFRI. AFRI is an international engineering and design company providing sustainable solutions in the fields of energy, industry, and infrastructure. Are you ready for a new episode? Let's go for it.
I have the pleasure to welcome you, Elin Fabre, to Urbanistica podcast. Hey, and welcome again.
Hello, thank you. So happy to be here again.
Yeah, so how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. And you?
I'm really good. I'm happy that you're here. So, yeah, I think you have a good story today to tell us about, a very interesting tool. And to start with, you were a great guest in the previous episode, and now we get more listeners. So I would love that to start with you. Tell us more about yourself. How would you like to introduce yourself? What are you passionate about?
Well, I'm a political scientist, and I've been working with development policy, I would say, for like 10 years. And then I ended up in urban as a coincidence. And now it's been almost 8 years working with sustainable urban development in various organizations. And now working for UN Habitat, which is the United Nations agency in charge of sustainable cities, where I work at the Global Public Space Program and manage the HerCity initiative that we will talk about today.
Yes. So tell me about the background of HerCity. Like, how did everything start?
So then you could listen to our last episode, because we were talking about the urban girls movement, right? And the global mapping that we did. And then we did this pilot, trying out all the great tools that we had found all over the world. So those were tested in Fittja, in Botkyrka, in Sweden. But what we mainly did was to put together tools and methods for participatory and inclusive urban planning and design, with a specific focus on young women and girls in socioeconomically vulnerable areas. So it could be informal settlements in the global south, or suburbs to large cities in the global north, like Botkyrka, for example.
Yeah. So the focus area is on the north.
For the pilot, we wanted to test tools coming from the global south, mainly in the global north, to make sure that they would work in both contexts. So what we're doing now, and why I'm in Nairobi, it's to roll out a global program called the HerCity. And it's actually a digital toolbox to assist cities and urban actors throughout these processes, facilitating the collaboration between professionals and citizens and other multi-stakeholders. So we went from tools from the global south. I mean, now I'm simplifying. And tools from the global south, tested in the global north, and now trying to roll out this program globally with tools that are supposed to work for cities independent on context, the geographical context, I would say.
Yeah, and it's really a catchy name, HerCity.
Yeah, it took a long time to come up with, actually, and then all of a sudden, a colleague of mine came up with it, and after our first workshop, actually starting to put together the toolbox, and when she said HerCity, we just said, yeah, that's it. And then I think no one ever didn't say that it wasn't a good name. Urban Girls Movement was good, but very long. So HerCity but it's also your city, and that's kind of the case we want to build. It's also Mustafa's city. I mean, if you build the city for girls, it's still the same, based on the same idea. We believe that it works for more people. So it's also supposed to work for HerCity is supposed to be our city, everyone's city.
Yeah. Because like when you announced about the new tool and the name is HerCity, I start to hear like many voices and talking that, okay, this is very feminist, and this is the only focus on girls, and maybe this is not going to be good for the other groups in the society.
Yeah, I can understand if it kind of triggers that kind of feelings. But if you dig deeper into it, it's really a way to show professionals, male or female, in our cities, no matter if they work for public or private sector, that they can work together with the citizens. And when you work together with citizens, you mustn't forget the young people and the feminine population. So it's really about making sure that they have a place at the table, and that they, should also perhaps in these cases be in my majority, to teach us what they actually can bring, the experience they bring that is of huge value. So that is like more when it comes to how you design these kind of processes. But then also our experience, and I think we talked about it last time, our experience show that, and we know it from other areas within development, that when you invest in women, a larger community benefits from those investments, and it goes also for urban planning and design. So we see that, or at least we see this tendency of young women and girls planning with diversity in mind, bearing in mind like the small kids, the grandparents, their dads, brothers, people with disabilities, people speaking other languages, and a bit they think about themselves a bit, but far from only.
Elin, when you say professionals, who do you mean by this word? Architects, planners?
Exactly. So any professional that would be involved in an urban planning or design or implementation process for that. So as you said, typically architects and planners either in our cities and municipalities or regions, but it could also be private architects, private companies. It could be investors. It could be, real estate agents or construction companies. But it could also be researcher or civil society organizations or grassroots organizations in, organized actors on one hand, and then we have the citizens on the other. And
so let's start talk about the tools. If you explain to us, I guess they are open source and in English.
Yeah, so far they're only in English, but we hope that we will be able to translate the toolbox into at least the UN languages. The toolbox, as you said, they're open source, it's free. You create your account. You go to hercity.unhabitat.org. We launched this toolbox on this Monday, so just a couple of days ago on International Women's Day. And quite a lot of people are listening in. And if you weren't part of it, you could go to our YouTube channel, our social media, there, HerCity Toolbox, or you follow the hashtag HerCity, and you could find the recording, so you can learn a bit more in detail what it's about and discover the website. Having said that, the toolbox is really either you register as a project facilitator, or you register as a participant. And then you have the 3 phases that you can follow flexibly. You don't have to do everything, but you have the assessment phase, the design phase, and the implementation phase. And within these phases, we have different blocks, different activities, and different steps with digital tools that you could follow and kind of put together to your liking or according to your needs, and kind of follow the entire process. It's very detailed, so we don't think we forgot anything, but you don't have to do everything. So it's really supposed to work for everyone and make sure that you don't forget anything important along the way.
And this covers the early phase, the of the planning and urban design, right? I guess not focusing only on like maybe planning, like a
No,
different
exactly.
phases of process.
Exactly. So the first phase, the assessment phase, starts with what we think is, crucial for this project or for many projects, but that is often rushed, is the stakeholder engagement and stakeholder mapping. So basically, you make sure that you have all the actors that should be involved on board from the very beginning. So we put quite a lot of effort into making that, creating that picture, looking at the gaps, and also, building our larger team that we will, work with throughout this process. That if you do everything, it would take half a year, perhaps, before you start, you break the ground, so to speak. But so that is the first. But then we do a series of different assessments. Either you do, if a city, for example, want to analyze the situation in all the neighborhoods in the municipality, then you would do a citywide assessment. If you know exactly which area you're working in for a specific project, then you would go straight into the site specific, which is, you do observations, you do exploratory walks, you gather data, but together, professionals together with the participants and the citizens.
Yeah. And may I ask you about the team who created this tool? We talked a little bit in the previous episode. I don't know if it's still the same team who are the people behind putting together this tool.
It is the same team. So it's a small team half from UN Habitat and half from the Swedish think tank Global Utmaning. But the extreme value of the Urban Girls movement process and kind of the movement actually that started to grow is that we have quite a large number of experts. We call them experts that have different competences and that have been part of this journey since 2016. So we have kind of an expert group that we consult all the time. But then we have some even more present partners. I mean, it's financed by the Swedish Innovation Agency, Vinnova, and one of our most important partners is Block by Block Foundation that does Minecraft for urban planning and design. But we also work with the smaller companies like Method Kits and obviously the web teams and the design teams have been extremely valuable and important in this endeavor. So we have a group of experts and partners of almost 100 people, I would say, that have been really active in helping us to make this as good as possible.
That's awesome. Really great team. And Elin, because now you mentioned this is a kind of half a year process if you use the toolbox. What is the value that we going to get after half year? Because this is half year is a kind of too long period for, let's say, architects. It's a lot of hours for the project. So what is the value that we're gonna gain in the end?
I think the mayor of Botkyrka put it very well, that, I mean, most cities and municipalities, they don't have the money to fail. I mean, you need to know exactly what you should invest in and what you should build or what you should focus on. And that is, that meets the needs of your citizens. Because if you're not doing the right thing, that will not be money well spent. Either it will be vandalized or it will not even be used, or you will have to put money actually to provide for those basic services that was needed in the first place. So, I mean, our experience shows that if you involve more people and obviously citizens that usually aren't heard, but also other professionals and also other services, for example, in the municipality, then you will get more pieces of the puzzles in the right place and you get more knowledge and you will, make sure that you do the right investments. So I would say in most cases it's money and time well spent. And also, I mean, we didn't think about it in the beginning, but imagine if you have a group of 30 volunteers, basically, helping you on your plans, assessment, and designs. I mean, if you would put consultancy fees on that, then we're talking about many, many, many zeros. So you could also see people are actually providing their expertise and their hours for free in these kind of projects. So which has a tremendous value. You mustn't forget that.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good point. And so I register on the homepage, then I get the access to the toolbox. And is there material to download, or should I work digitally? How is it going to be?
Yeah, both actually. So all the tools are digital. Most of them are, you enter your data in the platform, and it kind of gathers all your data, because it's also a way to manage projects in multi-stakeholder teams and between, all these new borders of information that we kind of encounter when you work with, for example, just the UN on one side, and you have a small the think tank Global Utmaning. We encounter these things, so we wanted to have this kind of platform also for data and sharing data with participants. Yes, so most of the things are in the platform, and you have the results. And then obviously there are other tools. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel, so we're using as many other tools that exist already. That's the mapping that I told you about in the beginning. So obviously we link to those. But we also made quite a lot of checklists and templates to simplify, particularly for the project managers, I would say. So you have I would say, perhaps 75% of the toolbox is for the project managers, how to do multi-stakeholder projects, basically. And then you have parts where you have the participants, the girls and the other professionals that are attending. And then you have one part where they actually are the main users of the digital tools. So you're supposed to be able to use it on your smartphone when you do your observations, for example, that will gather in the toolbox.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm looking forward to use it. And is there going to be some kind of support in case people need or didn't understand something? How to reach out to you?
Yeah, so
or to HerCity team?
You reach out to us via social media or via our email, obviously, or the connect form on the platform. But in general, we're using this year to roll out a few test projects in a number of cities. So obviously there is facilitation and support from our side in these projects. So we also still have some scope to take on new projects. So the first one signing up might get some help. But then, we will provide long-term support for those that need it. But the toolbox is built in a way that if you've done it with a bit of facilitation, perhaps the first time, then you're supposed to be able to use it yourself. So, for example, we see some of the organizations that were involved in the pilot in Botkyrka, they're now running their own projects in another suburb in Stockholm, in Flemingsberg, where they actually, and we see they're totally able to do it themselves. But we're happy to be here to follow, to support as much as we can. But then we hope that cities will, a bit as we said before, will realize that this is a way of making sure that they spend resources on the right interventions and getting free expertise from citizens and other professionals, so that they will actually put it into their regular budgets. But we also see private companies that we're partnering now with to use it in, like, real estate or developers, because they actually believe that will make the areas they're building better, and it will give them advantages compared to others on the market. So there are different types of uses that we see, and obviously small municipalities or with limited funding in the global south, we're trying to do our best to find also long-term solutions to support cities in these processes. But we hope it's user-friendly enough for most to do it themselves.
I think so. I was yesterday. I'm checking quickly. I think it's user-friendly. So, and I'm thinking about one thing here. Are you giving a kind of certification for this, or no? It's just a toolbox, not a certification thing.
I mean, there's so many different certifications, so we're not getting into detail on that. But I mean, we do provide like a HerCity certificate for the cities, and obviously, what we do, particularly for the younger participants, is like doing letter of recommendation. You'll be part of this process, and that is something that is very, very important to have on your CV. I mean, we've seen it with the girls in the pilot in Botkyrka in Fittja. That, I mean, some of them totally changed course of life after being part of this project, and choose to study something that they would never have studied otherwise. So obviously, when you're a young teenager or a young woman, getting all the recommendations and support you can from these kind of from other actors in the field is obviously very important.
So this is going to be a really interesting journey. What is going to be the next step? Did you plan something next, or now it's just testing the toolbox?
I mean, all of the tools have been tested a lot. Now we're testing the digital versions of many of these tools, and we're testing them in its totality. So what's on our table now is really facilitating the HerCity projects that are starting up. So we have our main pilot first in Johannesburg in an area called Diepsloot. It's an informal settlement. So we're setting up that project. We have projects that are going on, that they've been doing the assessments in Gaza and the West Bank. We have a number of other projects that are starting. So we have in Beirut and in Cairo and we have one in Copenhagen and in Stockholm, actually quite close to Botkyrka. So we have a number of different projects. We have a project in Lima coming up. So we're trying to have like a global portfolio at the end of this year, between 5 and 10 projects at least, so we could show on that diversity. But then obviously, I mean, we want to be able to provide this toolbox for a long time to come, and so we're working on those partnerships as well.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to follow the different projects in the different cities. And I love that you stressed it one more time, that it's for all the cities, not only for the south or the north.
Yeah, I mean, planning and design processes can look very different, but I mean, they do have some things in common, and particularly when you work with participation and inclusion, I mean, people are people. So we particularly see that the global north had quite a lot to learn from these processes, where you usually had perhaps just expected that your authorities would take care of, talking on your behalf, but that it also has a value to talk yourself, and listen to.
Yeah. Well, I'm really happy by this conversation, and I'm really ready to use this tool. And I would love that we finish this episode by you giving us some 3 takeaway messages, like for us, the listeners, and that we're going to use the toolbox. What should we think about?
My first main takeaway would be, I mean, we've been doing things in a specific way for decades. We do see challenges in the global south, in the global north. On many levels, we have the climate crisis, we have a democracy crisis in many areas, we have a health crisis. So what would it actually cost to try to do things differently, and involving those that we never usually listen to, then in this case, young women and girls, and in these processes, I mean, what do we have to lose? So dare to try. And our slogan is "Let her guide you." Dare to let her guide you, simply. That is the first thing I would say. The second main takeaway is that HerCity can really be a network for cities working with inclusion, and there is a growing call from cities and urban actors to learn more from each other, I think. And we're kind of gathering all these like-minded cities in a way into a network, so they can regionally reach out to each other and really be inspired by the work, because we're dealing with tricky societal challenges, but one thing we can agree on, I think, nowadays is that good practices and success stories is what we can build on, and we need to dare, picking a bit from each other's and stealing each other's ideas more, because they've been testing. If it worked, there's a huge chance that it will work in your context as well. So that would probably be the second. Now, but a final thing that we really learned from this experience is that we talk a lot about, we did it last time, I think, smart cities and innovations, etc. But also bearing in mind that you could look upon that in a different way. Being smart or innovative, it doesn't always, here we're working with digital tools, so it's smart in that sense, but it could also be using underutilized resources. So, or daring to take on a new perspective. So I would say, be super innovative, but perhaps innovation is not always what we traditionally see as innovation. It could be just, for example, involving girls in urban planning. That can be super innovative, even if you do it with a pen or on a paper. It doesn't always have to be stop with paper.
Thank you so much, and I'm happy that we did this conversation, and hopefully see you again in a new episodes, and maybe in a new city as well, because you're all around in different cities every time I talk to you.
We'd be happy to come back with some of the lessons learned from Johannesburg, for example.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for listening to Urbanistica podcast. I hope you really enjoyed this episode. You learned something new and also got inspired by the guest. Don't forget to share the episode on your social media and recommend it to people you think they are really interested in this topic. Thank you so much again for giving your valuable time to Urbanistica podcast. I am Mustafa Sharif. Keep up the good work. Keep loving cities.